really touched me.
The Upanishads, maybe just as people, some people are starting to join. How did the Upanishads, how did that strike you first?
The text, the Upanishads.
You decided to focus so much in on the Upanishads as your first book.
Um, well, when I first read them, I was, let's see, I was 20, I think. And before that, I'd had a number of, I'd kind of a spiritual perspective in general. But when I first read the Upanishads at about age 20, you know what it's like when you're 20.
Yeah, a
uh,
mess.
well, no, I was thinking more kind of looking and wondering
Yes.
and when I first read the Upanishads in translation, I remember plainly um, I couldn't sleep that night. You know, it just it's like the words were kind of pulsating on the page, and not to sound too weird about it or anything, but
Wow.
I found that I felt that they were expressing something that in a strange way I already knew, um, and and resonated very deeply with me. And it seems like they were wisdom that you know was already, it was deep in my heart, and that they were giving words to it, and I found them very very moving, and and that's what first took me to India when I was 20, and I wanted to
Hmm.
go to the place where these were first uh, taught. Uh, and then then I continued my readings, and that took me into um, the Vedas in general, which you know the kind of a larger context for the Upanishads. The Upanishads are very contemplative, very meditation oriented, and I had a meditation practice, and will continue to. And that then took me into studies of the Vedas, which are kind of the larger context of these teachings. And then that took me into Buddhist texts, and then into yoga texts, and then into bhakti texts. It
Yeah.
just kept flowering. Just there's always more and more and more.
Hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. I was curious about that.
Yeah, I
There's
found. I'm sorry.
no, please, you go.
I found that my initial readings, studies. I wouldn't even. I hesitate to say studies. It was more kind of imbibing, you know, reading and contemplating. Um, were were based on a kind of a sense of experience, and the experience that they drew forth, and I just was fascinated by that experience of um, what we might call spiritual perspectives and values and teachings. And then that led me to want to know more and more about them, you know, philosophically and historically, and that brought me back into the academic study, and eventually into a PhD and that sort of thing. But the and I still continue to do that. You know, I'm a professor, but the kind of the seed was really that kind of resonance that I felt with the texts, that they seemed to bring forth from me, and I wanted to share that with people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, to me, it's interesting, Bill, you being an academic, absolutely, and a professor, and also a professor of religious studies. And I know how many times you've been to India. I remember speaking to you about that, and I also myself met you when I was with Kelly Hawes,
Mhm.
maybe 2009 or 10. Um, in Columbia, South Carolina. I know you're in North Carolina now, but you've had a pretty big effect on us at Swan River Yoga. A lot of our teachings we still take with us and we carry to a lot of our teacher trainings and to a lot of the students. And
Very.
one, I know we're so blessed. And then it was such an amazing experience to have you visit us in 2012
Mm.
and come to New Orleans specifically. Um, when
Yeah,
I
thank you.
first met Yes, thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. When I first met you, you were teaching in a very large yogic group setting. It was for Anusara, and it was my introduction to this book. I
Yeah.
just want to show it's Exquisite Love. And these are teachings from Narada, Heart Centered Reflections on the Narada Bhakti Sutras. And
Yeah.
this has stuck with me as being honestly one of my most favorite translations of the Bhakti Sutras. And
That's
because of
wonderful.
that reason, I pull this out of my shelf. I have so many things marked. I have all these pages of things that I've like wrote down. What is Shravana, you know, and the word satsang and puja. I really went to town when you introduced this to us in 2009. So that the Bhakti Sutras, along with the Bhagavad Gita, became my favorite texts.
Huh.
But I was wondering, because you have such a background in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra and the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras, the Bhakti Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, do you specifically have like one main go-to, or do you have an appreciation for them all? What's your favorite?
Oh, wow.
I know, look at your book collection. Uh-oh.
That's um, it's a good question, and the honest answer is I love them all, and I find each one it just brings me to new discoveries and new inspirations and new support. Um, so how to and I think probably I would say all of them. Okay, now let me modify that just a little bit, and I think that my my heart is drawn to spiritual literatures, um, particularly in times of challenge, but at all times. But because I find that they give us a way of thinking. And that's perhaps too. I don't mean to sound like they give us, commandments or that kind of thing, um, but they ground us. They give us language to think with and perspectives, and they are the wisdom of the ages. So when I kind of turn around and look, there's so much there. There's so much wisdom that we have that we can turn to. Um, and I think to get to your question, there are some particular texts. I think you've mentioned a number of them, the Upanishads. Of course, that's a group of texts, but those are kind of an eternal interest for me. The Tantra text, the Vijnana Bhairava, and the Pratyabhinirhridaya. It's the heart of recognition. The Shiva Sutras. Your people at Swan River will recognize these names. I
Yeah.
kind of continually return to these, and the Bhagavad Gita is always right there. It's um,
Mm.
it's always. I have a whole section right there of basically Bhagavad Gita. Okay.
Wow.
In different languages and that sort of thing. So uh, it's such a rich text. There's so much there. Every time I pick it up and read it, I see something new. And every time I pick it up, I see something familiar, and I feel like I'm at home in a way. So that's a really good combination of new and at home.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
glad we'll be talking about the Bhagavad Gita. I'm glad to be doing this.
That whole shelf, number 3 shelf, is all Bhagavad Gita.
Well,
Oh, it's amazing to have that many translations. Yeah, that section.
yeah, down here.
Got it.
Bhakti texts, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other texts. Yeah.
What are maybe,
You have good eyes. You can see that.
oh, it's amazing, amazing. I'm always curious what translation to get. Is there some that you could possibly recommend, since some of them might be doing your workshop this weekend?
There are a number of them. Some are more, some are easier to understand than others.
Yeah.
um, I like a lot of them. I think probably uh, let me suggest one, and that is a translation by a man named Eknath Eswaran.
Ah, yeah.
I can spell that last name. It's EswaraN. You want that again?
Yes, please.
The last name is Eswaran. EswaraN.
Wonderful.
And he has a few books on the Bhagavad Gita. One is a 3-volume set, and another is a condensed 1-volume set. And I think there's another that's even more condensed than that. So people could look it up in the various, in bookstores or electronic stores and so on. And the reason I'm suggesting him, I hope it's okay with him,
Mhm.
is that he is Indian. He is Indian heritage. He's born and raised in India, and also well, I think he's no longer with us now, but he was a professor of English literature in British universities. So he has a really good combination of a deep understanding of Indian sensibilities and a way to share them in very understandable English and approachable English. And he has introductions to each chapter and that sort of thing. So that might be a good start for people. Eknath, his first name is Eknath, Eknath.
Eknath.
Eknath Iswaran, in Bhagavad Gita.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Because, a lot of our students are beginning, and we all are, I guess, really, truly always beginning, aren't we?
Yes.
Some translations I've found very academic, and I appreciate that about the academic world and gathering knowledge and having even critical thinking and deep understanding of backgrounds and history. But then it's interesting because the Bhagavad Gita to me is so much about self-referencing and contemplation. It's very contemplative,
Good.
as you have said. So do you feel like, based on that, as a beginner, this would be the right approach to start with, is him?
That's my sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I guess it's always a little bit risky to recommend one over another because, some people have different tastes, but I think I would suggest that to begin with. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. The Bhagavad Gita to me also, for me, that's a tough question, but I am so drawn to the struggle of the Bhagavad Gita
Mm-hmm.
and how deeply personal the struggle is expressed, but then it's also quite universal.
Yeah.
Really, in the end, our struggles are unified, even as they are right now in these times that we're in.
Yeah, they're very human, aren't they, in a way? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might say just a little bit about that. Oh, by the way, while I'm thinking of it, in terms of translations,
Yes.
if people are interested in what we're going to be doing this weekend, I will be using my own translations, and I will share those translations with the participants. I will send them as a handout that people will then have in front of them, and there will be just a few verses. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and each chapter has many, many verses. So it's about 1,000 verses. I'll be referring to maybe 6 or 8 of them through the whole weekend. So, but I will share those with the group. They will have them in front of them.
Wonderful.
Okay, now back to your other point. Yes, for those who don't know about the Bhagavad Gita, it means literally Bhagavad Gita. The word Gita means song, and the word Bhagavad means many things, but it means the gracious one, or the one who gives, shares goodness. And translated as I'm hearing just a little bit of an echo. Are you hearing me okay now?
I am hearing you okay. Yes.
The word has come to be translated, and you see it sometimes translated as the Lord. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but so it's sometimes translated as the song of the Lord. And the context of it is that we have it's basically a conversation between two figures. And these figures, on one hand, are a very good person. His name is Arjuna. He's a very good person. He wants to do what's good. He wants to support the world. He wants to do what he can to support the integrity of the world, the wholeness of the world, the balance of the world. He's a good person. And I think in a way, we can think of Arjuna as you and me. I mean, as you know, yeah, we want to do what's good. We want to do what helps the world. We want to do what supports the world, particularly in times of a real challenge in which there is uncertainty and doubt and maybe some fear or some anxiety. We want to support the world. And Arjuna looks out. He's a warrior. In fact, he's said to be the kind of the warrior par excellence. And he's there. He defends what is good in the world. He looks out at one point. He looks out into the world and he sees he sees so much that seems to challenge the integrity of the world, and he sees so much, and he gets really discouraged, and he's the strong warrior, you see, and he gets discouraged, and he actually sits down and he's really discouraged. And he shares his discouragement. I want to come back to that word discourage in just a minute, but he shares his discouragement with his friend. His name is Krishna, and shares his discouragement, and then Krishna sings words back to him in response to this discouragement. Now, I'm lingering on that word discouragement. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Kind of intentionally, because it's based on the word courage, of course. And the word courage, the English word courage is the etymology of that goes back to something about the heart. The French word coeur, the heart. You see, so in a sense, we can say that Arjuna loses heart. He loses his heart, you see, and he becomes discouraged.
Oh.
And and it's a very difficult time for him because he sees the challenges and wonders what am I going to do? How am I going to be in the world? You see? Krishna sings to him then all of these many verses, and in these words we see words of encouragement. We see words where Krishna says, and basically he says, return to your heart. Return to your strength. Return to those qualities that are inherent within you that will allow you to be courageous, to stand. He says, Tishtati, stand up, stand in your courage, stand in your courageous heart. And at one point, he says, as he sees Arjuna's discouragement, he says, just two words in the Sanskrit, three words in the English. He says, Yogi Bhavana, which means be a yogi.
Mm.
Be a yogi. And so we can think of the entire Bhagavad Gita as, well, what is it to be a yogi in challenging times? As Arjuna is listening to Krishna, he comes to realize that these are actually the words that these are divine words, that these are words of timeless wisdom. And he realizes these are the words of the Lord, Bhagavan. And the word for and the whole thing is in verse, is sung. And again, the word there is Gita. So these are the words of Bhagavan, the Gita of Bhagavan, Bhagavad Gita. And they encourage Arjuna, who, listening to them, returns to his true heart and returns to the world, engages the world from the stance of the courageous heart. I'll sing some of the verses as we go through the sessions this weekend, so that you get a little sense of what it sounds like as a song.
Wow. Wow. I love that relation of discourage and then encouraged and then courage, those three words together. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I'm sure we've all had moments of feeling unbelievably afraid, especially first initially getting an understanding of a global crisis and pandemic that we're in during this time. I do my best to call it the global awakening, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I've had moments of being afraid, and I'm sure all of us have.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of courage, what are things that maybe we could do on a daily basis, or what helps you to keep courage going? And in a time like this, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, wild. That's a good word, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I do is I return to the teachings, and the teachings such as those that are presented in the Bhagavad Gita, and the song gives us many practices or many stances, inner stances that we can turn to. And I'll be talking about some of them this weekend. I mean, there are many of them. But, things like to cultivate patience, Shama, which can be hard. We want things to move quickly and rightly so. We want things to move, and at the same time, it can be really it can cause inner turmoil. uh, uh, so there's a need for kind of to be patient, with others, and to be patient with ourselves, combined with a kind of what's known as Dhamma, a kind of a self-control, so that one can stand in one's heart. I think other practices that I undertake, or that I try to cultivate, a practice known as Tyaga, which is often translated as renunciation, and here I'm going to be thinking of it as kind of a voluntary simplicity, rearranging one's life so that there's more simplicity rather than complexity. I'd like to cultivate more compassion for those who are suffering, a compassion for those who are helping those who are suffering. There's so much suffering, and so part of my yoga is to cultivate a sense of compassion. And one thing I'd like to stress about that is that compassion is not necessarily kind of pity. And I'd like to develop that a little bit, because pity can be there's a kind of hierarchy to it. There's a kind of I don't know if others would hear that, but that somebody else is pitiable in a way. All right, compassion is more really experiencing and being open to and appreciative of what the person is actually really experiencing, and then the courage to do something about it. And compassion is an active yogic virtue, rather than just kind of feeling sorry for others or for oneself or something like that, and actually feeling it and then doing something about it. And so, and there are ways that we can do things in this time of challenge. We can be supportive in so many ways. And so that's part of what I do. Of course, I meditate every day. That's very, very important. I mean, centrally important to kind of return return to the heart, to meditate every day. We're very fortunate in that, or I'm very fortunate in that I have a job that allows me to work at home and do this kind of thinking. So, I mean, speaking. So my classes at my college classes, for example, I'm able to continue with, but I'm very fortunate. But otherwise, I try to get out if I can, into the world of beauty and the natural world if I can. Go to a park if you're able to. Things like that. I try to remember goodness and to reach that place in me that would like to express goodness and wants to express goodness. You say to touch that place in me that is Arjuna, and to try to do what I can to help. Yeah. Now that may be an abstract answer for you.
No, that's not abstract. That's clear and applicable and relatable. And none of us are really in a separate situation right now, which is interesting. So to hear of those that have come before us, that we respect their background and their gathering of both knowledge but also experience,
Mhm.
and also can steep it in the heart, that's helpful for us to hear.
Yeah,
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
and I think your point is a really good one, and that is that we are in this together, and the human community is in this together. And um, one of the key teachings of the Bhagavad Gita that I'd like to return to at some length is that there is within each person, there is a divine presence, and um, and that all people, all of those who are suffering, and all of those who are fearful, and all of those who are helping with those who are, all of us, everyone, within each and every one of us, there is a divine presence, and that if we look for that presence and kind of remember that presence and be open to that presence, then then there's more courage. Um, we're able to appreciate it, be be grateful for it, and to um, respond to it with a sense of heart, of courage.
It's interesting, you know, it's I heard you say that once you're in your presence, there's more courage. And then I was thinking sometimes it takes so much courage to find or retrieve that place. And it's maybe it's something we all need to do right now, to find that unified essence, is have courage
Mm-hmm.
to do so.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, when you're saying like, oh, it takes courage to find it, and then when you find it, actually you have real courage
Yeah. Yeah.
pushing it back in you up.
It's yeah, it becomes active, and it's interesting that in a way that's kind of that's the center. It is it's the center in terms of the heart, but courage is in a way the center, because that then leads to other yogic qualities, steadfastness, and um, um,
Mm.
well, said compassion, and strength, and steadiness, various qualities that are grounded in the courageous heart.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yoga, in a sense, is the abiding in that courageous heart.
That's what we're going to do this weekend with you, and we're so honored to have you here at Swan River, or anywhere in the world. Anyone can join us, truly, right? It will be through Swan River, so anyone that wants to join, they would register through Swan River, but we're encouraging a global community
Mm-hmm.
at
Good.
this time. It's this Friday, just so everyone knows, this Friday and this Saturday. Um, Abide in the Courageous Heart is the title, just as John, or just as we all have honored ourselves and the way that I was introduced to you, and now that we're coming together here and now, um, I want to honor all of those beings that have come before us, that have brought us to this place here and now, and have a respect for that,
Mm-hmm.
and to remember our background and our foundation, and to know now that to have Bill with us at this point is such a beloved and sweet honor. And so if any of you can join us as students, um, I love being a student.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Friday, May 29th from 6 to 9. And also Saturday, May 30th from 4 to 7. There's 2 portions, and you can do either one. But if you can honor the background of wherever it is that you have been, also, all of you listening, and the foundation that has brought you to this place and time. I just think of this time right now as a collective unification that's going to expand as another window of opportunity and an even more formidable type of courage that is probably maybe even off the map. It's something completely new and different. But to get back to the tradition is such an incredible honor, to honor the past, to honor the foundation. You've always been a part of our foundation, and we're so grateful for that, Bill. So, so grateful. And we look forward to having you both Friday and Saturday with us. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes. Is there any last thing that you would like to say before we say goodbye to everybody?
There's one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It'll take about 15 seconds. Krishna is speaking here, so this is said, is understood to be the words of the Lord, if you will, Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and it goes like this: Bhaktya mam aminyanati yavanyascha tatvata tato mam tatmano nyatva vishade tadanantaram. See, it is a song. It's a Gita. And I would translate it. Remember, this is the Lord speaking. He says, it's through love that one comes to know me, who I am and what I am. And when one comes to know me in truth, one enters into my very being. And I hear that, I hear yoga there. The immersion into the true being through love.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. We're so grateful. And we look forward to having you Friday and Saturday. And I just want to sweetly recommend this book also. It would be maybe for after Bhagavad Gita, but Exquisite Love, William K. Mahony. One of my most favorite books on the planet. All kinds of things marked in it. I keep it close to me, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for being with us, Bill.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes. We'll see you Friday and Saturday, and hopefully all of you. Thank you for taking this time. We look forward to it. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you Friday and Saturday. Bye.